So, wow, how great is this? It is my enormous pleasure today to introduce Bob Ryan, author of Scribe, My Life in Sports. He's a Jersey kid who made Boston his home and went on to cover sports here nationally and around the world. Playoffs and championships in virtually every college and pro sport, plus the Olympics. He's been writing about sports based on his book pretty much since he could pick up a pen and pencil and had some paper in front of him. Professionally since 1968 until his retirement a couple of years ago. Bob spent almost his entire career working for the Globe, with a couple of years out working on air for Channel 5. But even if you never heard his voice on the air, you certainly heard it through his writing, sometimes blunt, sometimes flowery, always opinionated and to the point. I'm a lifelong sports fan myself, and reading Bob's work has been one of the high points of every one of my days since I moved to Boston in the 70s. Please join me in welcoming the one and only Bob Ryan.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming. And on behalf of me, I want to thank me for allowing you to play hooky. We're obviously going to get to questions, but I'll throw out some opening remarks. One of the questions, the book has been out for a week. A week ago today was the actual publication date. I felt like I had a very long gestation period because the book was actually, the send button on the original draft was hit on August 27, 2013. And at that point, I assumed it would be a spring release, and that would have been good. But any author will tell you he or she is very happy to have a fall release with the holidays coming up. So in that sense, I was very grateful that there was some sort of procrastination. But by the time the book came out, I felt like I had something in the book by C-section. It was a long wait, and I was anxious to have it. And so that's the genesis there. One of the things I've been asked this week, and I've been done a lot of radio interviews, which is very nice, is why did you decide to write the book? The actual truth is, and I'm not being disingenuous though, when I say that, so of course along the way in my career I thought about writing a book. I think any writer with an ego and a little hint of pomposity thinks that maybe the Will would just love to know all his or her thoughts about the career they've led. But I talked myself out of it. I really did, because I just came to the conclusion, you're flattering yourself. Better people than you have either not written books or have written books that didn't seem to have much traction. So that's a nice thought, but go put it aside. Then about 4 years ago, an agent named Andrew Blauner, who was a Brown University graduate who had read during the Bird era and had read me then, and is a big basketball fan, a New Yorker, born and raised in Manhattan, came to me and identified himself. He's a very prominent agent for people far beyond sports, and came to me and identified himself as a fan of my work and said that he really thought I should do a book. And I explained to him that I'd already talked myself out of doing a book, but he persuaded me that there was some viability. I said, okay. I said, that's great. I appreciate that. But I'm not going to do anything until I am free and I'm officially retired. I want to be able to concentrate on this. And I'm planning on getting out after the London Olympics. So if you can sit around and wait for me to get out, get done, then we'll talk. And he was very patient, and we had a couple of meetings, meetings. We had lunches and a few beers in New York and in Boston over the years. And when I did get freed up after the London Olympics and officially retired from the Globe on a day-to-day basis, we got together. I got a little proposal. He shopped it around, and in January of 2013, editor in New York City named George Gibson from Bloomsbury took the book. It was really fortuitous because George Gibson and I had worked together 25 years ago on a previous book, a Celtics book that some of you might even be aware or have seen. I can't even remember the long, pretentious title, but it was about the images and the iconic. But it was all about pictures, great photos from a tremendous photographer, the late Dick Raphael, and I supplied the text. It was much more of a picture book first and a print book second, although there's plenty of print, but the pictures were the selling point. But George had edited that book. He worked up at Addison Wesley in Reading at that time, and we had no contact in the ensuing years, none. Now he has taken the book. So I'm in the hands of two people that believe in me, and believe me as much or more than I did doing myself with regard to this project. I wrote the book over the months of April to August of 2013, after about a 6-week period of actually researching myself. I had to go back and check out things and corroborate memories and check facts and remind myself of things. And that was very interesting. It was kind of fun. And then I got started writing. And for the first time, I'd written 11 previous books, and all of them, of course, as I was a full-time employee at the Globe. And the other books all have to be crammed in on nights and weekends and vacations, and it's like a giant term paper hanging over your head. It's exactly what it's like. And they're not fun, and only a couple of them really involved a process that was even remotely pleasurable. Any author will tell you that the most times, the great line that was uttered, I don't know who said it, someone, one of you here, you might know, someone is credited with saying, I don't like writing, I like having written. And most authors of any kind will relate to that. So, but this book was not hard to write in that this was one of the few times that it wasn't didn't feel as if it were a giant term paper. One reason being, I was able to devote my full energies to it. I actually wrote on a schedule. I read about, what does John Updike do? What does Philip Roth do? What does Gresham and King do? What do they do? They actually sit down and write on a schedule. That's what they do. They get up in the morning, they have breakfast, they write. They have lunch, they go back, they write. Then they go about their merry way. Never did that before. So I've arranged a schedule for myself, 4 days a week writing, and 1 day a week that I called Make Money Monday. Now, that was to do my ESPN Around the Horn, if you're familiar with that, and maybe my Comcast, which is the studio up in Burlington. That's where I do the Comcast at night. I tried to consolidate them as often as possible to have 1 day where I could, and which I do often, by the way, because of the logistics. I live 40 miles one way from Burlington. It's a schlep, believe me, that, you know, I really don't, I get sick of 128. I hate it. I'm so sick of looking at it, and I can't get rid of it. So, I had Make Money Monday, and then I wrote Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and occasional Saturday when my wife was out of town. And I actually stuck to it. It was the first time I had ever exhibited any kind of discipline. And not only that, I actually beat the deadline. Now, nobody does that, and I certainly had never done that. But the actual deadline that was, in deadlines, they give you a deadline, and they, you know, it's like a speed limit. If the speed limit's 50, 65, we know you can go 70 safely. And you get a deadline and print and a publisher, and they'll give you a deadline, and they know it's going to be at least a month later. They know that. They build it in. It's like the flight times, you know. So I actually made it because I had a self-imposed deadline, which was September 1, due to the fact that my wife and I have an annual little trek up to Maine, and I wanted to go up there with a clear mind and feeling good about myself and no pressure. So I got it done. I was amazed. I was surprised myself. Now, of course, the editing process takes place from that. And George Gibson is a phenomenal editor, brilliant guy. And he was able to help me take this from that original chapter and put it in that chapter. And without rearranging or writing any new words, I was able to recraft the book, or he was able to help me shape the book into a coherent book. It is, as you'll see, it is not a chronological book. It wasn't intended to be. I never wanted it to be. I was going to be a book. I was born on February 21st, 1946, and then right up to today. No, it's a thematic book. I thought I would break it up into different experiences and sports that I covered, and so it's a thematic book. And it also has several personality profiles of prominent Celtics, such as, or Celtic-oriented people such as Red Auerbach, Dave Cowens, Larry Bird, and John Havlicek, but a chapter on Chuck Daly, who I had a very interesting and fun relationship with from the time he was at BC 45 years ago, and Bob Knight. And I mean, you can't go wrong writing about Bob Knight. Everybody's fascinated about Bob Knight. And so I had my own particular interesting up and down, up the graph, down the graph experience with Knight, and I was able to write about him. But George was able to craft this so that the first half is essentially, basically, kind of chronological. It takes me from, you know, birth to, and the column that it takes me from birth to the end of the 87-88 Celtic season, when it was the last time I covered the team on a daily basis. In '89, I became a full-time columnist and spent the last 25 years of my career writing columns, and then several features too, which I think are important to do. So the second half of the book is more the thematic, you know, chapter on football, chapter on colleges, chapter on my life of television, both local and ESPN, chapter on golf, et cetera, international basketball, the Olympics, and then tying it all together with a little personal look back about everything and talking about my father, which is something I'd never done before. And it was something, he died when I was 11. And this is really almost, I won't go so far as to say cathartic, but it was something more emotional than I expected it was going to be. So that's the logistics of if you have the remotest interest in how this thing was put together. The career I'm proud of in the sense of I really did have two distinct halves. The first half was with a strong identity covering the Celtics, and I was very proud of that, and I loved it. And I say in the book that if I could turn the clock back to January 1st, 1980, and to January 31st, 1989, professionally change nothing. The good, the bad, the in-between, I'd do it all over again. And I might even backdate it to January 1st, 1970. That's how much I enjoyed that aspect of covering the NBA, being a beat man, traveling the NBA, essentially. Also, there was a year of covering the Red Sox, full year, 77. And that's a story you'll find out. I was in between Peter Gammon stints at the Globe. So the second half is more thematic, and that's the deal. The highlight of the second half, which I address, is getting involved in the Olympics. Now, that's something that, though growing up I had an interest in reading about the Olympics as far back as the '56 Olympics, reading about them in Sports Illustrated, I never associated myself with covering them or thought that I would. I never gave it a whole lot of thought. And when I stumbled into them in '92, when I went to cover the Dream Team and did a couple of other pieces in addition to the basketball pieces, and got a feel and fell in love with them. I really love the Olympics when they're somewhere else. We'll get to that. And I know you're going to ask what I think about Boston and the Olympics, and I think you would. So I love the Olympics, and there's a lot, and I went to 11 of them in a row, and 6 summer, 5 winter, and they provided me with a whole different perspective. So valuable. I used to look forward to getting away from our meat and potato stuff in the middle of the winter for 3 weeks, going somewhere, hopefully going somewhere other than, Salt Lake was good, but you want to go somewhere with the Olympics. You want to get out of the country and go somewhere and immerse yourself in the entire experience, come home, kind of refreshed to jump back into your regular routine, and the same in the summer. And it was a great way to break up the winter and the summer in those Olympics. So I really did fall in love with the Olympics, and there's quite a bit about the Olympics in there. So with that said, I'm hoping now you might have some questions, and whether it's about the book, whether it's about sports, whether it's about the newspapers, whatever, I'm at your disposal for anybody.
We live in a instant gratification society, right? And even on your around the horn experience, you have 30 seconds to make your point or less, right?
Right.
How do you think that has changed and will continue to change the profession of journalism and writing? And what are writers going to have to do in order to keep future generations engaged, to the point that they want to read a 200-page book?
Oh, boy. Thanks. I'll start with the first one before I can figure out how I can babble my way through the second one. One of the things that's happened, and we have certain culprits, starting with talk radio, is the lack of perspective and the demand for instant adjudication, instant judgment, instant assessment on everything. And it's certainly not a good thing. Consider that in 1979, when the first all 24-hour talk radio devoted to sports was the WFAN, and that now, 35 years later, that is the #1 radio format in America. It has surpassed country, which was the previous holder. There are more stations devoted to sports talk radio in America than any other format, which is stunning. And in any big market, there are multiple stations. We have a great example here. We finally had a competitor to challenge WEEI. Sports Hub 98.5 has done that, and now they're fighting back and forth over supremacy now, and they probably will for a long time. One of the things that sports radio has proven, sadly, and hosts have to acknowledge it, is that good is boring and bad is has sizzle. Negativity trumps positivity by about a 10-to-1 margin. When a team is going well, the calls are repetitive and infrequent. But when things aren't going well, stand back. We had Exhibit A here after the Kansas City game with the Patriots, and Brady's fate and the team's fate, and I mean, there's nothing wrong, there's nothing illegal about it. We had reasons to doubt them, and I did. I wanted to see them assemble an offensive line. We'll get into that later. Point being, it's back to the point here. Perspective has been lost. One sport that has really suffered from it is baseball, because baseball, with 162 games, you can have long lulls You can have 10-game losing streaks and win a pennant. The best hitter is going to go 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. The best pitcher, Clayton Kershaw, anybody? The best pitcher can get lit up on certain occasions. That's the nature of the game. Baseball is not meant to be micromanaged on a daily basis. It's meant to be looked at with a little step back, whether it's a series or a week or a month. Then we can make some proper judgments, because there's so many things that go into the ebb and flow of baseball season. Football, okay, once a week. You only have 16 games. It's totally understandable that a football game is completely micromanaged when there are only 16 of them, and therefore every one has a disproportionate importance compared to one out of over 162. That's kind of obvious. And the same goes for basketball and hockey. You need a little bit of perspective. That's been lost, and it's not encouraged anymore. And writers get swept up in it too. So that's kind of answering your question. That's one of the negative byproducts of where we are, of the focus on on the day-to-day heat intensity of sports interest. Now, technology, and we might as well get right to it. I mean, here I am at Google. Technology has been a two-edged sword. Technology made my life a lot easier in so many ways than writing a story, sending a story. Writing this book for the first time, because it was the first, I hadn't written a book in 10 years. So it was the first post-iPad era for me, the first post-iPhone era for me, writing a book. And in contrast to all those other books going back to 1972 when I wrote my first one, the process was enhanced by that little baby right there. Whenever I needed a fact or a spelling or whatever, a stat, bingada, 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 right there. I love that. No, it was fantastic. It made my life easy. It's hard to imagine going back 40 years on a typewriter with carbon copy and hoping if you needed to find out something and it wasn't instantly available in an encyclopedia, making a phone call, and maybe 2 days later you get the information. And that's where we were, writing stories in those days. Now you have the instant gratification of that. You used the word gratification. Yeah, instant gratification is demanded, and it's very dangerous. I do think what we went through here could be like a mini course in a journalism school. To look at how Boston reacted to the first 4 games of the New England Patriots season. And I was guilty. I was asked on the air on Comcast. Somebody might have even seen it after the Cincinnati game. How do you think they're going to do? I said they'll be 7-9. And that's because I had my mind couldn't wrap around the idea that they could reconstruct that offensive line. It was such a mess. And they did it in 5 nights, 5 days. I don't know how they did it. I still don't know how they did it. And suddenly with a line, Brady's Brady again. Isn't that nice? So there's a lot more of this aspects of this we could talk about. But I just think that the ability to step back and accept that there is an ebb and flow. But I said that's the biggest casualty in this is baseball. It's absolutely baseball, because baseball with 162 games, and it should not be micromanaged. Years ago, I suggested, knowing it would never be done, but I really thought it was the way to go. I really suggested to my sports editor that rather than cover every game with a game story, that we should cover it by series. You should wait, and you should, provide information about what happened in the bare bones. Say you have a 3-game series, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Friday and Saturday and Sunday, you go to the game, you assess all the information. Monday, you have an overview piece about the weekend, a series. But nobody's going to do that. Now, we have changed the nature of game stories, and they're being phased out, but not to the full extent that anybody would dare do what I suggest and wait until the series is over in baseball and then weigh in on the import and the reality of the weekend. But I think it would be a great idea, baseball.
So you've seen a lot of incredible games over your career and over your life. If you could go back and relive one game, what's the greatest game or series that you've ever personally witnessed?
I have to go by sport. I really do. I can't pick one. You have to go by sport. I'm associated with basketball more than anything, and then maybe baseball. But it's just so hard. And then within basketball, there's the NBA and there's college. And I went to 29 Final Fours. and lots of tournament games. I love March. I used to try to cover, get out there and be somewhere for the entire month. So when I was covering the tournament. But I have a fairly reasonable answer for sport by sport. For football, the easiest one by far. It's the snow game. It's the last game in the stadium. It's the tuck rule game, and I immediately decried the tuck rule as an abomination under the Lord, and it's finally been adjudicated. But it benefited us, and I didn't mind it as much, though, even though it was an abomination under the Lord. It was divine retribution for Sugar Bear Hamilton and Ben Dreith in 1976, and I was there for that in the Oakland Coliseum, as it was known then, okay? So you know the one I'm talking about, and they were the best team in football, as I realized that day, and they got screwed by the refs, and they didn't win in 76. So 25 years later, we finally got a divine retribution. Now we're even with Oakland, okay? But it's a bad rule, and they got rid of it. A fumble. In fact, I'm going to just digress very briefly. Because one of the things in sports that absolutely I am most mystified by, and I pose this question and never get an answer. At what point in football history did down by contact come into play? Because I guarantee you in the 50s and 60s, we knew a fumble when we saw it, and you could fumble when that ball hit the ground. Well, I don't know when they put it in, but that's the rule, and it takes weight off the referees, of course, makes it easy. Now with replay, they can get it right every single time because they can. But a fumble is a fumble. To me, a fumble should be a ball is loose. When the ball is loose, the whistle doesn't blow until somebody gets it. Now, and if in the course of trying to get it, you observe someone is guilty of, a little bit too extra, enthusiasm, like a knee in somebody's, or an elbow in the nose. Okay, you drop the flag, give them 15, even if they get it. But why don't they? I hate that. Okay, now, so the Vinatieri's field goal in the snow, if not the greatest field goal ever, it's one of the two. Because Pat Summerall kicked a very similar one for the Giants in '58 that everybody in my area, I grew up in Jersey, will remember. Okay, that game, the import of it, that was my football moment. Basketball, the triple overtime game with Phoenix in '76 still for me resonates. There's so much drama in that game. The Celtics played the best they had played in the entire playoffs in the first 14 minutes of that game. They got up by 22. Phoenix would not go away. No matter what they did, they could not get them to go away, and they finally come back and tied it up, and we had this historic 3 overtimes, including John Havlicek's miracle shot, followed by Gar Heard's miracle shot, followed by Richie Powers, the referee, getting attacked at midcourt by a fan after the end of the overtime. The timeout that Silas called that Richie Powers wouldn't call, and then finally Glenn McDonald coming deep off the bench to win the game for them in this 3rd overtime. That was my, and then with Bird, there's like a 10-way tie, Bird era, come on, But the Heat game, the game with the 97-degree Fahrenheit on Friday night, May 8th, 1954, or May 6th, 54, not May, June 6th, 1984, Games 5. That was a mind over matter such as I've never seen because, we'll get to that, but that game. And Game 6 in '86 against Houston, which was Bird's own choice, you'll read in the book, as his favorite game because he was said never more prepared. Isn't that interesting? Why would he say that? Never more prepared for a game. If you remember, Game 5 was the Seasting Ralph Sampson fight. And there was a lot of emotion attached to that series as we came home. And Larry assured the fans via the media, as he did so well in those days, everything's going to be okay. It was his version of Aaron Rodgers' RELAX, It was okay. And back in '86, then he went out and played the best all-around game I ever saw him play. He was in every aspect of the game, including defense. He was phenomenal. He was everywhere. Okay, baseball. It isn't one game. It's the totality of games 4 and 5 and 8 and 04. They've lost Game 3, 19-8. We've all buried them. I wrote, I killed them. I mean, you had to. I said, you wanted the Yankees, you got the Red Sox. Are you happy now? Et cetera, et cetera. So we know how that one went in the 9th inning, and the walk, the steal, the single. Then we get around, Poppy hits the game-winning homer. The next night, later that day. See, the games ended on the same day because the first one ended after midnight, and the next one started at 5 p.m. So Game 5 starts at 5 p.m. here. Goes extra innings, and the moment when Wakefield comes in, and remember the history of Wakefield the year before, and Wakefield comes in, and the guy gets on it, and Varitek's catching, and of course he didn't catch him. It was the other guy caught him, and he wild pitches him around the third base, and we're ready for the next one, and he finally strikes out Ruben Sierra to get out of the inning, and then Poppy on a 10-pitch at-bat bloops one in the center of Loaiza to win the game. The totality of the emotional experience of those two and the whole thing was my favorite baseball moment. As a writer, as a fan, October 167 still stands as a culmination of a fan experience for so many of us that year that is still kind of over there. And finally, hockey, though not my sport, I got on that moving train in 2011, after the second series, covered the Tampa Bay series and covered the finals. And that seventh game against the Lightning, 1-0, no penalties. And their coach, Boucher, saying that it was like 60 minutes of overtime. And it was. It was tension-filled beyond belief. And then going out to Vancouver, getting down 0-2, finally winning and being there. So the game was that overtime game. But the Phoenix, not Newby, that 1-0 game. But the whole experience was, that enabled me to be able to say I'd covered all 4 major championships. Which is a great, something not everybody gets to do. And I actually had covered all 4 major championships in a 7-year period, too. College basketball, I'll go one more. Villanova, Georgetown, in kind of a tie for first between Villanova, Georgetown in '85 and Duke, Kentucky, the 104-103 game, the Leitner shot, because that is generally acclaimed to be the best college game ever played, and I would certainly concur. Certainly the best one I ever saw. Yes?
So, Bob, I often listen to Bill Belichick answer questions, and it's extremely painful.
I'm on to Battle Theater.
Yeah, so
I'm on to the Battle Theater.
I'm curious if he's not the most frustrating athlete/coach to cover, who might be?
No, he is for the beat people. And there's a big distinction between how the beat people react to him and how the columnists react to him. The beat people are so totally frustrated. They need information. They need to know whether, that it was, could you be more specific than a lower body injury, Could you be more specific than that, They need to know things, and they need to know a lot of things that they can't get from him. However, there is a misconception that he is always that way. He is not always that way. He is often that way. He's horrible on Sunday after the game. I merely mean he shouldn't even bother. Don't even bring him out there. Because win or lose, he's monotone, and it's ridiculous. It's useless. He's a little bit better on Monday after he's seen the film, the tape. As the week goes on, by Friday, when work's in and he's more relaxed and they got all the job done, he's almost a raconteur. And if you push the right button on football theory or history, or he doesn't mind hypotheticals. He doesn't mind talking history. He loves it. He has the largest private, allegedly, who can disprove this? He's alleged to have the largest private collection of football books of anybody in the world. That if he sees a football book or he hears about one or a friend, or somebody, his kids or his wife, they know to get it, add it to the collection. And he knows more about the Browns, like Paul Brown, than his son does, Mike. I mean, he really is a historian. He's not that bad at the end of the week, but he's terrible. But for the people, but even in his worst days as a columnist, you can write the scene. So if Belichick's at it again, being monotone and being not forthcoming, you can write that and have some fun with it. As a columnist, I never went away empty. Now Parcells was coming out almost the polar opposite, because he was a raconteur every day for 4 years. I always said, I always wished that I had somebody had gotten annotated, transcribed every press conference he had from the day he signed to the day he left. It would be a good football. It would be be a best-selling book. It would be a fabulous book. It would be all the stuff that he talked about. I mean, he talked about Broadway, talked about horse racing, talked about baseball, talked about Bob Knight, talked about and football. He was fabulous. I mean, but just the total opposite of Belichick. But for a columnist, I didn't mind Belichick. But you're absolutely right. He is the ultimate nightmare for a beat man. I've never encountered anybody close to that in all my years. No.
What is the biggest rule change that you would like to see in either professional sports or college?
The biggest rule change I'd like to see is you should only need 1 foot in to catch a pass in the National Football League. I just can't believe that you should be making people into Nureyev just to catch a pass. That's 1 foot in college. It would make life a lot easier for the referees, and I just don't think it's necessary. I don't see the point. 1 foot's in okay in basketball. 1 foot's in and okay in baseball. It doesn't matter in baseball. You catch the ball, you don't. But in football, why do they have to have 2 feet as opposed to college? I don't understand that. Baseball, it's not a rule. Well, it's DH thing. Make up your mind, baseball. When we're playing interleague virtually every day now because of the schedule. It's preposterous. I mean, the way it breaks, you got to, in a way it's going to go. They'll keep it. The Players Association will, they'll lay under that bus. They'll never give up the DH. So give up and do it. But that would be the. I don't really have enough knowledge about hockey and to do it. And in basketball, rule change? No, it's not. It's just interpretation. I mean, all this emphasis on flopping and the fines, just referee better. I don't think it's that hard. I really don't. I've been watching this league close up for 45 years. I think competent referees, knowing who the players are, what their proclivities are, you knew Vlade was going to flop. So let him lay there, Every once in a great while, he might get run over legitimately. Too bad. That doesn't make up for the 500 times he got away with it, right? I mean, I don't see the problem that it's that big a deal that it should be a fine or that referees can't tell the difference. I just don't get it. But I don't have a chin. But 1 foot in is that really, and of course, but I already mentioned the other thing. A fumble's a fumble, damn it. And so, I mean, you saw one the other day. Catch the ball, falls down, ball pops out because he hit the ground. Why isn't that a fumble? Hold the damn ball. That drives me crazy, too. So it's kind of a tie in football.
So you mentioned Parcells as a great example of somebody who gave really good press conferences. And the Jets have another one, but their fortunes seem to be going in opposite directions. So the question really is it just that the Jets had better players and have worse players now? Or has society changed? Has the glare of the spotlight on coaches changed such that it is in fact not possible for a coach to survive for 5 years and yet be as open and loquacious as
Well,
Parcells?
the cycles have diminished, no question. I'm trying to think, who's the longest tenured? Belichick has got to be right now, the longest tenured. Who's second? Anybody know? I have no idea.
Marvin Lewis.
Who is?
Marvin Lewis.
Marvin Lewis is second, what, 8 or 9?
No, 1 year less.
1 year left. He's been that long? Wow, I didn't know.
He was hired out of Baltimore.
All right. Red Auerbach identified this, believe it or not, 30 years ago, that cycles were shortening. Even then, he saw this coming. You need the new voice, whatever it is. Coaches get burned out. The players tune you out, et cetera. But now that's not the reason. It's the instant gratification of the owners. As soon as an owner, some owners, there are these impetuous owners, they spent, they're a new breed compared to the old guys. The Ralph Wilsons are as opposed to the Snyders. Snyder comes in and he spent all this money for the Redskins and he wants now. And of course, Ralph Wilson came into the NFL when you paid $25,000 as an entry fee in 1960. That's what it was, and dies at 94 several months ago as the owner of a sitting on a gold mine. But it took 54 years for that gold mine to accumulate for him. But other guys come in and they want instant gratification. And especially if someone has immediate success, they say, why can't we have it? How come he has it? And that's true in football, baseball, basketball. It's so true in all of them. There's no question. That's the big change. It's not so much the players tuning out the coaches. So coaches are casualties. They don't get it. They become casualties with some of these impetuous owners. And it is, and if there's a majority of those kind of new breed owners, if you will, nouveau riche, whether it's from technology or whatever it's from, then you get these coaching casualties. Say this, this town, you really should applaud the Celtics ownership because Doc Rivers lost 18 games in a row. And in 2006, well, that team did. Team lost 18 in a row in the 2006-2007 season. Now, there were mitigating circumstances that I think press knew. Pierce was hurt, missed most of them. They would have won a few with him, but they lost 18 in a row. Doc didn't go anywhere. He was around the next year to win a championship, thanks to Danny's manipulations on that draft day. These people have shown remarkable patience, I think, in a long way, and they believe in Danny. So I applaud them. But to me, it's very simple. They're just impetuous owners. I mean, they have huge investments. And some of them have debt service, and and they really have strong concerns. So, and the coaches, you all saw it's easier to fire one coach than fill in the blank, 12 players. Basketball, 18 in hockey, or 23, whatever the roster is, 53 in football, and baseball, 25. So that's what they do.
On the topic of the Celtics, you covered them day to day during a pretty great time to be doing that, I would imagine. Could you talk a little bit about how the Celtics' relationship with this city has transformed over the last 20 years or so, as it's been more up and down, and they haven't been that consistently great team that they were. And one quick follow-up, where do you think that my favorite player, Paul Pierce, ranks in the history of Celtics greats?
I think I've been here long enough to, get to size up the ongoing dynamics, okay? It was up until the very, very recent, time, the last decade, but even more recently, the Red Sox were number one. And then we could start, and everybody else was fighting for the 2, 3, and 4 spots. And in the winter, it was always a Bruins town. And the only time the Celtics reigned supreme ultimately was during the Bird era. Even during the Havlicek Cowens era, that was the Big Bad Bruins they were up against, and they weren't winning that battle at all, even though they won 2 championships. The Bruins did as well in that era. And now the Patriots are number one. And whether the Red Sox are 1A or 2 is a subject of debate. But who can argue that the consuming passion now, number one overall, is the Patriots? And that's an amazing transformation because in 1993, when Parcells came, they were fourth and so distant a fourth, there wasn't even an argument. But in the winter, let's be honest, it's a hockey town at the core. It's still the greatest hockey town in America. Strong high school hockey, the college situation, the ability to have a bean pot in where the city could have one, to have those 4 schools within 3-mile radius play that tournament. There's no other city that comes close to that. We are a hockey culture in the winter still, we've never been a pure basketball culture, never. In the Russell era, they were lucky to draw 8,000 a night in the regular season, and then they would fill the house if they're in the playoffs. And then in Cowens, Havlicek era, they maybe got it up to 12,000, 13,000, but never consistently sold out. Bird era, yes, they reigned supreme, thanks to Larry, and now they've fallen back. And I saw a survey the other day, what's your favorite team? And Patriots were 1, Red Sox were 2, Bruins were 3, and the Celtics had 6%. Okay, I'm not, that makes sense to me. I'm a basketball guy. It's a pain to me. I write about this in the book. I was an impetuous little brat in the early 70s. I was whining about the Bruins, believe me, and how people couldn't appreciate the Celtics. I mentioned that. Paul Pierce. Well, let's start with this. I've said this, first time I said it was in 2002, after that game in Indiana when he got 40 points with 20 free throws. And I said that kids don't try this at home. This is only one guy can do. He is the greatest individual scoring machine in Celtics history. Not the best player. He's not Bird, he's not Havlicek, but definitely the best guy with the most ability, the varied ability to get the ball in the basket. Nobody more than Pierce. He's a three-point shooter. He's a great driver. He's a great finisher on the break. He has all these up fakes and tricks right back to the 50s and 60s. He and Manu Ginobili are the 2 most throwback guys in the league to the 50s and 60s with the modern ability to shoot threes. Don't foul him. He goes to the line, he fouls. And he was an excellent rebounder for a guard, excellent rebounder. And he was a terrific player. So we got a Mount Rushmore of Celtics, you can't argue, okay, which is Russell, Cousy, Bird, and Havlicek. But if you're going to go to a 5-man, now the fun starts. Because you got 3 candidates for the fifth, and he's one of them, along with me, with McHale and Cowens. And Sam Jones right on the rail, believe me. But I'm a big booster of his in this regard, and that's a pretty good to me, I think that's pretty high praise. I can't put him on the Rushmore when Rushmore means 4. You can't get there. But he might be the next guy on the up. And I always say this, people forget, Paul Pierce came literally that close to dying. If the knife goes into that chest that far apart the other way, he's dead. And I thought that he came back so fast from that. I thought it was, I was in awe that he was able to function after that as well as he did. And we watched him grow, and I think he became a real leader. Now he had that one horrible moment in Indianapolis with the gauze on the face that looked like George, the troops at Valley Forge that night. That was. I don't know what got over him that night. I have no idea what he was thinking about. That was his one aberrational moment. Other than that, I think he was a great Celtic.
So what's one thing that you knew was going to happen, that you called right from the beginning and then it didn't happen? Like the worst thing that you've swung and missed on?
Well, I thought when Jim Rice hit the ball in October 1, 1978, the ball was going out of the ballpark, would have won but that was wrong. So we won't go there. I don't know. I really don't. I mean, they had a player named Garfield Smith in 1969 that I really thought my first year, second year, that I really thought was going to be a really, really good player. He was a hell of a, he was a good rebounder. Turned out to be an utter bust, and he's immortalized. He did something that won't be exceeded. It can only be matched. This is the gospel truth that he did this. He had the famous free throw airball hat trick in Phoenix. He missed the rim on all three. He was 6 for 31 lifetime free throw shooting. You can look it up. I kind of blew it on him. Other than that, I'm just trying to think. Ball players, Red Sox players come and you think some of them are going to be good and great, and they don't turn out to be very good. Honestly, I'm not trying to, I don't have an answer to that. Garfield Smith jumps out at me. But I was young then. I developed more, perspective.
One more quick question. So Boston and New England in general have so many iconic sports figures, from Tom Brady all the way down to Russell and everybody else. If you had to pick one person to represent Boston sports, who is it, and why do you choose Larry Bird?
I'm just trying to think about that question is a different one than slant to it. Representing the city, I would, I might go Havlicek over. I might go Havlicek as a representative. Scrub him up, bring home the mother. No problems, that kind of thing. Larry had some rough edges, so I love Larry, and and Larry grew to love Boston. But when you stand up there in front of thousands of people at City Hall and you utter the S word in regard to Moses, that's a little bit lack of polish, shall we say? Everybody loved it, of course. Bobby Orr is still the most revered figure in my time in Boston. As a 50 years I've been here, I post-date Ted Williams. That whole other worship of Ted of the elder generation is something else, So in my time, the 50 years I've been here since I set foot at BC in 1964, the most revered athlete, I think, is still Bobby Orr. And rightly so, because he's the greatest hockey player that ever lived, period. And and it's just the fact that he ended at age 30. Today, if he came along, that first knee scope would have been done, he would have been fine. But that's true of a lot of guys in history. We know that. But it's very, very true of Orr. I'd have to settle him. He never made a misstep in public. He represented, to this day, he just exudes class and positivity and everything else.
So him over Tom Brady?
Yeah, but Brady's not, Brady, yeah, but there's nothing, Brady's fine. Brady hasn't done anything wrong. I would say that people, this isn't going outside. No, it's just that I don't want this misinterpreted. Okay, I'm going to have to be very careful. I got the good guy over here and the bad guy over here telling me don't do this. But please understand what I'm saying. If he hadn't married the most successful model in the world, if he had married, if not necessarily the girl next door, but a regular person, he always dated celebrities. It was always the case. That's the only thing. To some people, that might put him off a little bit, But, other guys think it's fantastic that he never dated anything but celebrities. And he now just, you imagine, his money literally is tip money in their family account. It's the discretionary, fund money, it's all it is. They can go anywhere they want in the world. He can pay for it out of his, it makes him feel good. He can help out. And I'm not, I'm right. And that must be funny. And the other thing is the houses they build, it's like Jeter. What does Jeter need with that monstrosity he's got down there that they have already nicknamed St. Jetersburg, in west coast of Florida? I don't know. Anyway, Brady would be a fine representative. He always says the right thing. He's a bright guy, but I'm going to stick with Orr.
Couple of things. This is quarterbacks. Are they management or are they labor? And how much should they be standing up for the rest? And this is not a new topic, right? Even in the 90s, they had this whole QB club thing where they tried to split off from the players' union in terms of making their own money.
So who are you saying about who management or what?
Well, our quarterbacks. How much should they stand with the players and how much should they stand with the team when it comes to, for example, negotiations?
Well, I used to kid, and it's probably a good rule of thumb. Never trust an owner any farther than you can throw the building or the stadium, for the most part. And none of them are purely altruistic. They're all in it. They want to make some money anymore. There's no doubt about it. But some are willing to lose more money than others. And as they say, you have to sympathize, once again, in sport. In a sport like football, with the short career life, the danger of injury, the idea of your career could end at any given. Look what happened Sunday. Ridley and Mayo out for the year on one play, not cumulative. You have to have some sympathy for the players. The pendulum, this is so analogous to real life labor management, going back to Samuel Gompers and John L. Lewis and the whole labor movement in America, going back to the late 19th century, and Sinclair Lewis and the whole thing, all that, right? I mean, you had the management and you had the oppressed workers. I had a laugh when Marvin Miller did say, as he did say when he took over, that the baseball writers were the most oppressed workers he had ever represented, and and he was an economist who represented all kinds of union people. But remember this, and Marvin Miller took over in 1966. You know what? Show of hand. Anybody know? What do you think the minimum salary in baseball was in 1966? Minimum salary by the virtue of their collective bargaining agreement. 1966. We had indoor plumbing. Remember, color TV, the whole bit.
$50.
6,000. Okay. And they had, of course, no free agency, no rights. The reserve clause bound them forever, the whole thing. They had to be, things had to improve. And it didn't, and it was arbitration that did it. It was Peter Seitz, the arbitrator, that overturned in the Messersmith case. That's the big seminal moment, that changed everything. As much as Marvin Miller was a strident defender of the union rights, that arbitrator, Peter Seitz, is the one who actually is the person that they should all be thanking today for the way the world is now. So owners didn't do it willingly. They fought every change, every step of the way. There were two guys, believe it or not, they were very interesting because they're very distinctly different outsized people. The two owners who were so far away from their mainstream of all their other owners during their time, and they did overlap to a degree, Bill Veeck and Charlie Finley, both of whom at different times advocated total free agency, thinking that it would all settle itself, but okay. And that was, oh my God, gas. They were always ahead of their time and always were iconoclastic. So by and large, you got to go players, because there's an awful lot of owners that still, it's just the nature of the beast. So.
Why didn't you list Wellington Mara in that list of owners as the guy who said, we're going to share all revenue nationally in our sport as opposed to other sports?
What about Wellington Mara? I'm sorry.
Like as an owner who was so different from the rest.
The Mara family has invested in football for 8 decades, okay? His father, Tim Mara, got the team, back in the 30s. It's like the Rooneys. The Rooneys are the dynasty. Whether or not Art Rooney actually won the team in a poker game as part of the apocryphal story. It wasn't quite that, but it was something close to that. And now the Rooneys are still there. His grandsons are still running the team. There's some wonderful the Griffiths in baseball were the last people that I remember who, well, I don't know. I don't know if it's true with Rooney and Mara. They make their living from the team as opposed to, the Griffiths were the last ones in baseball. And, of course, they were always accused of being penny pinching, but I think Maras are considered to be excellent owners as owners go.
I guess the point was that I think he was the one who said that we're going to share national revenue, which was against, for example, what baseball did, and perhaps is the single decision that causes the success of football, the flat salary cap and shared national revenue on TV.
All right, I think the Maras, they're high on the list of good. I think Kraft, hey, some people, I think Kraft by and large has been a great owner for the fans. I'm well aware of his business issues. I know he's in litigation forever. I'm well aware of all that. But and I know he has a tremendous ego, and I know he wants to walk down the street and have people say, "Hi, Mr. Kraft, thank you so much for everything you've done for us," and all that. He does. I know he does. But he's been a pretty damn good owner, and they got that stadium built. And it wasn't completely without the help of the public, but it wasn't as much public aid as other stadiums and other arenas and other cities. By and large, we're pretty lucky. But in general terms, look, it's a capitalist society. We have a system in which the ownership owns and the labor works, but you still owners will get away with like more than everything they can get away with, and if they weren't forced into kicking and screaming to at times. Now, watch out for the next in 2 years when the NBA, when the association can opt out of the agreement now that they've got this whopping new TV contract. And if the owners didn't realize that was going to be a byproduct of this, then they're rather foolish, but I'm sure they do. So be prepared for a delay in the start of the 2016-17 season, I think I'm telling you right now. And then we know that. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Hi, I do want to get your opinion on the Boston Olympics.
Okay, good. I love the Olympics. I think Boston would be a tremendous site. I can just imagine what you need for a successful Olympics over and above the venues is gathering places and places for people to go in the off hours. Picture the Commonwealth Mall from Kenmore Square up to the Garden as people from all over the world strolling. Maybe there'd be kiosks, whatever, temporary kiosks it would have to be, Picture City Hall Plaza. Picture the waterfront as it is getting more and more transformed into something really nice and by 2024. There's lots of, I think it'd be fantastic. But take a trip to Beijing or Athens and look at the stadium sitting there and doing nothing, and ask Athens how they feel about it now. I mean, if Bill Gates or Warren Buffett wants to write a check for us for the billions that would take, okay, But the logistics are daunting. I can't believe what I'm hearing from people. Don't they understand? They have to build a stadium. They're not going to use Foxborough. They have to build. Where would they put? And what happens afterward? The Patriots aren't moving there. Who's going to play there? The Revolution? No. Red Sox? No. Eastie versus Southie on Thanksgiving Day? Is that it? What? Here's the things that always happen. The velodrome sits there and nobody knows what to do with a velodrome. The swimming pool, which is oversized and gigantic, sits there and nobody knows what to do with the swimming pool. The Chinese don't even know what to do with the stadium, the Bird's Nest Stadium. They don't have anything to do with it. And just remember, it's getting, the reality, look at what's happening with the Winter Olympics. We have 2 autocratic countries left. Oslo opted out. We've got Kazakhstan and we got Beijing. Winter Olympics in Beijing. They're talking about hundreds of miles away for skiing events and everything. But they can. There seems to be the only countries now that are willing to absorb all the costs and do what they have to do. I mean, they displaced how many hundreds of thousands of people in Beijing? We'll never know. I love being there, but I think it's preposterous. I don't know what they're smoking or drinking or I have no idea if they've ever really thought this out fully. This guy John Pitch. And also, do you like the idea that the guy that's the protagonist is happened to be in construction? I mean, seriously. I mean, this isn't even. He's not hiding anything. He's this construction guy. He would profit enormously from this. No. The answer is no. Okay, no. And I'm worried about the future of the Olympics because that 2022 thing is scary. That's all we got left. And nobody. I was hoping Oslo would say yes, but they're smart people and they said no. It may have to just run its course, the Olympics as we know it. But I do love them. I would recommend, if you can get to Rio, I mean it's an amazing take. I love the take. Yeah, as we say. Yes.
So this will be the last one for me, I promise. But
that's all right.
So I read an op piece about we were putting up a statue for Bill Russell, and it talked a lot about the history of racism in Boston and how that has affected the NBA. And you were a huge advocate for the NBA back in the day when they couldn't fill the house up because of the Bruins, who were in large part a white team. Do you think that racism has played that kind of pivotal role? What's your opinion on that and how it's affected the history and the future of the NBA here in Boston?
There was no question that when Dave Cowens came, suddenly sprung up a fan base that had not patronized them, spent money to see them. He certainly became a very popular player, and I don't think there's any accident that the Celtics started to acquire a sounder, stronger, wider fan base because the new exciting player happened to be white. It'd be ridiculous. I don't think it's any accident that I remember I actually wrote this once about in the Bird McHale era that the greatest cheers in the building are when McHale blocks the shot of a big black star, specifically Dr. J. It's foolish to deny that impulse. I think we've evolved and we're much better. The Red Sox thing, the history is shameful. The Yawkey history is shameful. And it's right into the 70s, the players who will tell you how much they did not like Boston. Reggie Smith was the most outspoken one of all. It got better and better, and Mo Vaughn would tell you totally the opposite now, because he came up in the 80s. In the 90s, excuse me. We've evolved to a degree. You know, the whole busing thing, Boston's national image was horrible. There were players, and there may still be some left, for all I know, who had things written in their contract in baseball. They couldn't be traded here. This is one of the cities they didn't want to come to, black players. But the NBA being, all, you know, being the composition of the NBA being, you know, whatever percentage it is, and black is a whole different matter now. I mean, everybody is used to the idea that, you know, the odds are that 8 or 9 or 10 of the players on the court at any given time are going to be black, and people are used to that who love basketball. But we had a bad history here, no question about it. The Red Sox were shameful. We all know the history of the last black player and all the other stuff I just cited. But I'm sure it affected people. But I think there's, fortunately, younger generation did not carry over the prejudices of their elders here. I think that was, you know, I remember going back to the book, Greening of America. That book was very popular. It talked about how the younger generation would have its evolve. And I think in that case, in this city, racial relations have evolved better because the younger generation shed the prejudices of their parents. Just an observation.
On the racism thing, recently with the Clippers, and actually more interestingly, the Hawks, like, what's going on here? Especially for the Hawks, for what seemed like a somewhat racist but somewhat innocuous thing, he just quietly disappeared. I mean, has the pendulum swung all the way to the other side where now...
Well, in general terms, a lot of pendulum has swung a long way. Things that could be said and written. 25 years ago, you can't do it now. You cannot do it. I'll give you an example. The Hawks thing, you know, we're talking about the owner saying that the black fan, they wanted a season ticket holding white population because the black fans don't buy season tickets, and they scared away the white fans, and the music scared away the white fans. I mean, oh my God, you know, that was hard to read. It really was, accompanied by the scouting report talking about Luol Deng, that there's a little too much African in his game. Oh boy, you know, just when you think you're beyond all this, this thing rears its head. My opinion on Atlanta, by the way, is that isn't the real issue there. The issue is that it's just a lousy sports town. And they've been there 46 years, and they've never gotten to the finals, and people are just never taken to it, never become and adopted that team the way they could or should. We were going to say something about, oh, hell, I forgot about it. I'm sorry. I was going to play off that. So, oh, yeah. 25 years ago or more, 30, I don't know, maybe more, I was writing a piece that was common, these things were very common, and I wrote one for Inside Sport magazine, and it was about the all-black team, the all-white team, the all-black white team, and the all-white black team. Guys who played, the guys who have the funkiest games, the all-black team, the all-white team, guys who had the whitest game, and then the crossover players. You couldn't print that now. You could not get that in print now. You could not do it. The players all got it. They always got it. It's still truth in the NBA that the white man's disease is the biggest, is the best ongoing joke in the NBA. God won't be to the black player who has a white man's disease. He's going to get razzed by his team forever, etc. But you can't even do that anymore. And people not have some special interest group jumping all over you. You can't even do that anymore. Even though the league is perfectly tuned to the idea that the NBA is the only element, maybe not the only, but one of the most prominent areas of our society where the fact of the matter is that the white man is judged to be inferior by definition and has to prove himself. And everybody in the league knows it at every level. And you can't say that in public anymore. So yeah, we've gone. We're in such a PC, frightening world and humorless world and special interest world. And I speak as a left of center person, trust me, but I get a little bit frustrated. I mean, with some of this nonsense. I couldn't write that story today, and it's too bad. It's a pretty good story. Well, we have gone through our hour. I am not going anywhere. You may have to do so. I mean, I got plenty of time if anybody wants to linger. But I thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. And I hope, let me just say one thing about the book. Nobody asked me questions, so I'm going to give it my little. What I hope you take away from the book is that I am somebody who was almost programmed to do what I did, you know, by virtue of my background, and that I enjoyed it, and I still like it. And though you hear about how so many writers get jaded and cynical, and they are only, you know, they don't care about who wins and loses, and they only write about people and all that stuff. I'm not that guy, and I still love the sports, the games. People talk about writing about people. Well, we wouldn't care about these people if it weren't for the game. The core of it is that all these people are involved in playing of a game, no matter what the game is. And so we've tried to reflect that. I'm really grateful and happy and lucky that I got to do it, and I hope I can share that enthusiasm with you throughout by reading the book. So thank you very much for attention and coming, and thank you for having me.